There are a lot of ideas out there about what starting and leading a nonprofit organization looks like. There's also a lot that you learn on the fly that might not line up with what you expected starting or leading a nonprofit to look like. So in this video, I wanted to share 6 things that nobody told me when I was starting a nonprofit that I had to learn on my own, and share my advice for how to handle each of these things if you are in the process of starting a nonprofit or have already started a nonprofit and might be discovering some of these things yourself. That will hopefully help you out. If this is your first time to my channel, welcome. Hey, I'm Amber Melanie Smith. As you might have guessed from my little intro there, I am a nonprofit founder. I'm also the executive director full-time for the organization that I started some years ago, and I make these videos here on YouTube to help other folks on their nonprofit journeys or other kinds of social impact or change-making journeys with tips and strategies, things I've learned along the way, things I know about and hopefully can pass to others to help make their lives easier as they are trying to make the world a better place. So all that said, I hope you find this video helpful. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, like the video, and ring the bell so that you can get alerts for the next videos that I post later. All right, let's get into these 6 things. Everyone's nonprofit journey is different. There's a lot of different things that go into how a nonprofit startup experience might transpire, from the skills you bring to the table in the beginning to the people you know who are helping you, all sorts of factors. So everyone's gonna have a different experience. I'm gonna share my experience and the 6 things that I learned. There were so many ups and downs in my journey, but I learned a ton of really valuable lessons along the way. So here we go. The first big thing that nobody told me and that I certainly did not expect getting into starting a nonprofit and running a nonprofit is so much paperwork. So when you're first starting out, you've got your paperwork to just start out. You've got to write your bylaws, you've got to do your articles of incorporation, and of course I'm talking about nonprofits in the United States for these things. You've got to file your 1023 with the IRS. You've got to, depending on the state that you're in, file a solicitation license. There's all sorts of documents and paperwork that goes into it, and understandably so. You know, if you're going to be a tax-exempt organization, the government wants to make sure that you're legit and you're not going to be using the organization for evil. But even after you get started, there's a lot of paperwork involved in running the organization year to year. You don't just file all that paperwork and then you're good to go. Oh no, that would be too easy. In the United States, at least, you've got to file your tax reports with the IRS every year. That's your 990. You have to, again, depending on the state that you are operating in, or states, plural, you might have to renew your fundraising solicitation licenses. You've got to be keeping up with your accounting and your bookkeeping. You might get audited and need to have all the paperwork for that. You've got to be regularly referencing and updating your organization's governance documents, like the bylaws that you originally wrote when you first started the organization, to make sure that they're still relevant to the operations that you have today. If it's been several years, there's just a lot. And of course, the complexity and the length of this paperwork is going to vary a lot based on the complexity and the size of your nonprofit organization. Paperwork is an inevitability when you are running a nonprofit, because running a nonprofit is like running a business, and businesses, of course, also require a lot of paperwork. So here's my advice to you. If you are a founder just getting started or serving on a board of a nonprofit, get familiar with all of the different types of paperwork that you're going to be expected to not just file but maintain each year. You might want to put a note on your calendar to prepare for deadlines associated with the paperwork, and just make sure that you are in the know about everything that's due. There have been cases where nonprofits have forgotten to file their paperwork for a certain number of years or certain period of time and have lost their nonprofit status. So this stuff is important. It also ensures that you're going to have the trust of your funders and your donors, so that you're staying on top of things and being a good manager of your organization. All that said, It's always a good idea to know what's what for your organization. But at a certain point, you are going to need to focus your energy, especially if your skill set is in some other critical area of the organization like fundraising or public speaking, etc. You're going to want to manage your time really well, and at a certain point it might be valuable to you to outsource doing all that paperwork to a professional who likes it and can do it for a certain, hopefully affordable fee. A final bit of time-saving advice is, of course, to keep all of your past year's documents in a folder so that you can quickly reference what you put on the form last year and hopefully be able to transfer most, if not all of that, to the updated form to make things easier on yourself. Okay, the second big thing that nobody told me to expect, but was something I really had to learn to deal with, and I think it's made me a better person, is that you're gonna have to develop a thick skin because you're gonna get told no a lot. And really, this is true for any venture. If you are an aspiring author trying to publish a book, or someone starting a for-profit or private business, or you're an entrepreneur trying to get an investor, you're going to get told no a lot. That's just part of the game. That's part of life. I mistakenly went into this perhaps with rose-colored glasses and being super idealistic and thinking, why wouldn't everyone want to support my cause? It's so wonderful. Of course, I'm biased, but I meet a lot of founders who have the same feeling, and you should feel that way about your cause because then your passion will come through to people who might be able to say yes to you. But ultimately, you might have to live with the potential that you might get told no more often than you get told yes. Here's my advice and how I learned to deal with this. First, I came to recognize that being told no was not necessarily a personal insult to me as an individual. Sometimes it's just a no for right then. Sometimes you're just not the right cause for the person you're trying to get support from at that moment, but maybe you will be at another time. So it's just important to recognize that sometimes there are other factors at play that might influence someone, a person, an individual, a donor, a grant foundation. It might influence their decision to tell you no to whatever you're requesting support on in that particular moment. In some cases, it took me years to cultivate a relationship with a particular funder or company who then later down the line, when we were a good fit, remembered that we had built a relationship and said yes. And in some cases, they even came to us to see how they could support us because we had established that long-term relationship and they wanted to help us out. They knew that they had told us no before. The second way I learned to deal with this is to look at the no as a learning opportunity. If someone is graciously willing to give you feedback as to why they said no, you can learn a lot from this information. You can learn if it was because you weren't a good fit. You can learn if there was something unclear or weak about your messaging. You can learn a lot of information that will help you go back and improve your odds of success next time. The third difficult thing that I had to learn that was not what I expected starting out is that creating a positive impact can take years, but that's okay. When I first got into the nonprofit world, of course, I wanted to start a nonprofit because I wanted to make as big of a difference as I possibly could in my community. So when I started out, I had this vision that in the first year or so, we'd gain a couple thousand followers and be able to sustain ourselves financially and really scale really fast. And then within 5-10 years, maybe we would have changed the entire world. I don't know, just something simple like that. But here's the thing. While there are some movements out there that may appear on the surface to occur and change things overnight, what you're actually seeing is the groundwork that has been laid for years by people and activists and nonprofit leaders and others in the community working to build networks and infrastructure and resources over time. And then when the moment is just right, change occurs, and to the rest of the world it looks magical, like, wow, this is such a sudden, surprising movement. But the activists, the leaders, the change makers, they know that they've been working on it for years, and that is what has happened behind the scenes. I didn't know that when I started. I didn't get it, but now I've seen it enough times and have experienced it myself that I see that that's what it really takes. And it's important for us to be honest with ourselves about what creating a deep and lasting and big impact takes, so that we can stay motivated and play the long game and be here making a difference over time. The other benefit to things taking a little bit of time to create positive change is that you have more opportunities over time to include people who need to be at the table, joining in the conversations, to make sure that whatever change is created when that moment happens is a change that's going to be positive for as many people as possible. So here's my advice and how I learned to deal with my own impatience and desire to see big changes happen fast. First, be patient with yourself, be forgiving and gracious with yourself. Know that one human has limits, and the team of humans that I hope is helping you, because I hope you're not having to do this by yourself, they have limits too. So don't give up on your long-term vision of big change, but plan and play for the long game. You want to be measuring your impacts and your results, big and small, along the way. And you want to celebrate the small impacts that you are able to make, so that you can see that even though the big change hasn't quite occurred, you are making progress towards that change every day. One of the most gratifying things for me in this work is when someone comes up to me at an event or in a group or something, and they tell me that years before that day, they had had some kind of interaction with me or my organization that, little did I know, had changed their trajectory. It had changed their day, it had changed their lives, it had changed the lives of someone else that they know. And I didn't know it at the time, I didn't see it at the time, but that just tells me that these changes are happening, and even if you don't see them, you should know that they're out there and be encouraged by that. The fourth thing that nobody told me when I was starting a nonprofit, but that I certainly learned very quickly, was that as talented as you may be, you can't do this by yourself. Now, one question that I've gotten often, including from folks here watching on YouTube, is, do I really need to have others on my team to start and run a nonprofit? And there's really two answers to this. The first answer is from a legal and ethical perspective. In general, nonprofits do need to have a board of directors that has their name on all your official documents for the state and the IRS and all that, because once again, a nonprofit is intended to be an organization that you start for the benefit of the public, for the benefit of the community, and the IRS and the state governments, in having their names on the paperwork, want to make sure that you are going to have leadership that represents the community and not your own personal interests. But beyond the technical requirements, I just want to share with you that you are really going to want a team around you to help with this, because there is a lot to do. I started out in my organization, even though I had some other people around, I started out trying to teach myself every single skill needed to run the organization. I was teaching myself web design, social media, graphic design, accounting, everything. And maybe that worked for a little while, but at a certain point, the organization grew and I was just not able to do it all. It was going to be much more effective for the organization's mission for me to outsource or get other people to help with some of those tasks, other people who, by the way, are way better at those tasks than me, to be more effective for the organization. And at a certain point, I figured out what my top skills were that I could bring to the organization to help it achieve its mission. And then I needed to be spending more of my time and energy on those things, like fundraising, like finding sponsors, etc. So that would be my advice to you. Figure out what your top skills are, and you don't have to be good at everything. It certainly helps to have a lot of varied skill sets, but Find what your top skills are that you're bringing to the table. Are you a great networker? Do you love talking to people? That is a really valuable skill. Are you a good public speaker? Are you more of a behind the scenes person? You like to do the accounting or the management or the program development. Just understand who you are as a person, what you're bringing to the table as a nonprofit leader, and then surround yourself with the team members who bring other skill sets to the table so that you can get everything you need to done for the purpose of your mission succeeding. The fifth thing that nobody told me getting into starting a nonprofit is that the time it takes for your organization to grow and scale and to potentially be able to hire staff full-time to run it can vary widely by organization. A lot of different factors go into how quickly your organization can grow in terms of its program size and also its budget. I've known some nonprofit founder friends who were able to work full-time for the organization they had started in just 2 or 3 years. I've also known some nonprofit founders who still weren't working full-time for their organization 10 or 15 years after they started the organization. So if it is your goal to eventually work full-time for an organization that you're starting, just know that a lot of factors go into your ability to do that quickly and be patient with the process. My advice to you, if this is your goal, is to plan well and effectively from the very beginning. You want to have a solid business plan, and you especially want to have a fundraising plan that you know will be able to bring in revenue sustainably year after year. When you have those systems and those processes in place, being able to hire staff that can run the organization's programs and run the organization itself is going to be a lot easier and happen a lot faster. In any case, you want to make sure that if you're going to go through the trouble of starting a nonprofit, that you're in it for the long haul, or at the very least that you have a plan to transition and pass off the great mission of your organization to another amazing leader, because nonprofit organizations are designed to exist beyond the tenure of any single person. And the sixth and final thing that nobody told me when I started a nonprofit is actually a really good, beautiful, wonderful thing. And that is that there is an amazing community built into the nonprofit world. Sure, nonprofits are run by humans, and humans are fallible and make mistakes and have egos and all that stuff. But ultimately, despite our humanness, I have learned and experienced that most nonprofit leaders, founders, or people coming into the organization who aren't founders are in it for the right reasons. They genuinely want to make a difference, they want to help people, and they love connecting to others who feel the same way. So my advice to you is to find that community in your area if you're starting a nonprofit, and work on building those relationships with other nonprofit leaders as early on in your process as you possibly can. You will treasure these connections. You will be able to lean on each other when things are difficult, share resources and information and learning and best practices and all that. And just in general, it's wonderful to know that you're not alone out there trying to make a difference. Now I want to hear from you. Are you starting a nonprofit, or have you been in the nonprofit world for a long time? And what are some of the things that nobody told you to expect, but that you learned along the way? Share that in the comments below. Before we wrap up, I just want to share once again, if you haven't heard my announcement before about this, that my nonprofit Founder to Full-Time Academy has launched. It is online with its first course, first of many that I'm planning, and that first course is Idea to Official, and that is for folks starting out on their nonprofit journeys in the United States to help form their nonprofit idea, create an effective program and brand, plan for the process to get their 501c3 status in the United States, and more. So check that out. The website is foundertofulltime.com. I'll also leave that link in the description below. I hope that you found this helpful and that it got your wheels turning. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. Final thought again, if you are on Facebook, don't forget to check out my group, Change the World or Bust. If you want to build that community of change makers, that's a great place to start. We have about 1,400 change makers from around the world in that group now, having great conversations about our journeys making a difference in the world too. So I hope to see you there, and I hope to see you next time. Thanks so much.